Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is absolutely foundational in the world of workplace safety and risk management. We're talking about the hierarchy of hazard controls. If you've ever wondered how safety pros actually figure out the absolute best way to keep people out of harm's way, well, this concept right here, it's the ultimate blueprint. Okay, so what's really interesting right off the bat is the shape itself. It's an inverted pyramid. Notice how it starts with this massive, broad, deep blue space up at the top, and then it cascades all the way down to this tiny, sharp red point at the bottom. That color gradient and the shrinking width, that's not just for show. It's visually telling us a very specific story about exactly how we need to prioritize our approach to hazards. Here's our quick roadmap for today. 1. The hierarchy of controls. 2. The most effective defenses. 3. Isolating the hazard. 4. The least effective controls. And finally, 5. Reassessing true safety. Let's get right to it. Section 1. The hierarchy of controls. Understanding the spectrum. Let's see how this whole thing builds out. The entire structure is made up of exactly 5 tiers. Step 1, right up at the top, is elimination, which is followed by Step 2, substitution. Then we drop down a bit to Step 3, engineering controls. Step 4 gives us administrative controls, and finally, right there at the rock bottom, we have Step 5, PPE. To truly appreciate those 5 steps, take a look at the scale we're dealing with here. We've got most effective, anchoring the top, and least effective, grounding the bottom. I really want to emphasize the sheer contrast we're looking at. As we take this journey through the tiers together, just keep in mind that we are literally traveling from the absolute best, most bulletproof way to handle a danger, all the way down to the weakest possible approach we can take. Section 2. The most effective defenses, the top of the pyramid. So here is where we want to focus all our attention, those broad blue and green sections. This is the absolute gold standard of hazard management, where our defenses are undeniably at their strongest. Right at the very top in that wide blue zone, we have elimination. And the definition here is wonderfully straightforward. Physically remove the hazard. You aren't managing the danger, you're not tiptoeing around it, you're making it disappear completely. The crucial point here is the absolute finality of it, complete removal. If you've got a dangerous chemical on site and you simply stop using it and get it out of the building, the danger is zero. It's the ultimate form of safety because the threat literally no longer exists in your space. Moving just one step down into that green tier, we find substitution. The action defined here is to replace the hazard, meaning you still have a job or a process you need to get done, but you swap out the highly dangerous element for a much, much safer alternative. Let's compare these top 2 powerhouses for a second. Physically removing the hazard versus replacing the hazard. While replacing a danger with something safer is incredibly effective, it's still a slight step down from just completely removing it. Why? Well, because an alternative chemical or a new process might still carry some tiny residual risk, whereas complete elimination leaves absolutely zero risk. Section 3. Isolating the hazard, engineering controls. Down in the yellow zone, we hit engineering controls. This means we isolate people from the hazard. Notice the key word there, isolate. Actually, think about what that implies. We haven't removed the danger, and we haven't replaced it. We're just building a wall between the hazard and the people. Okay, let's really dive into this distinction, because it is incredibly important. We are no longer removing the hazard itself. That dangerous machine, it's still running. The toxic gas, still being produced, but through ventilation systems, or physical metal guards, or acoustic enclosures, we are merely putting a physical barrier between the hazard and the workers. It works great, for sure, but the fundamental danger? It is still sitting right there in the room with you. Section 4. The least effective controls, the bottom of the pyramid. Dropping into the orange zone, things get a bit more precarious. Here we have administrative controls, changing the way people work. As you might guess, this means relying on safety procedures, rules, and training. Unlike an engineering control, this relies almost entirely on changing human behavior and just trusting that people will follow the rules perfectly every single time. Let's look at exactly why relying on administrative controls is a drop in safety compared to engineering controls. Isolating people from the hazard means a physical barrier, like a bolted metal guard over a spinning saw blade. Changing the way people work just means putting up a sign that says, "Hey, be careful around the saw." Relying on behavior change is a huge step down in effectiveness because, let's face it, humans get tired, they get distracted, and they make mistakes. And finally, we reach it, that tiny, sharp, red point at the very bottom of the pyramid, PPE. The definition here is simply to protect the worker with personal protective equipment. Protect the worker with personal protective equipment. It is absolutely essential to note that PPE is firmly anchored at the dead bottom of our hierarchy, sitting squarely in that least effective zone. Look, if a worker has to rely on a hard hat, it means the falling object hazard hasn't been removed, it hasn't been replaced, and it hasn't been isolated. The hazard is literally about to hit them on the head, and that PPE is their absolute very last line of defense. Section 5. Reassessing true safety. Reviewing the actions. Let's actually strip away all the fancy categorical names for a second and just focus purely on the action verbs. Remove, replace, isolate, change, protect. Look at how the strength of the action actively degrades as we move down that list. We go from the absolute, undeniable power of entirely removing a problem all the way down to merely trying to protect against it once it's already right on top of us. And this brilliantly illustrates why the visual design of this whole concept is so powerful. That inverted pyramid shape dictates our reliance on each tier. We want our safety programs to be built primarily in that wide, blue, highly effective elimination zone at the top. We should rely the absolute least on that narrow, vulnerable red tip at the bottom. The wider the area on the graphic, the wider our margin of safety in real life. So I want to leave you with a rather provocative question to chew on for your own workplace, your own projects, or honestly, even just your everyday life. Are you just protecting people with a thin layer of defense, or are you actively eliminating the hazard from existence? Don't just settle for the bottom of the pyramid when you could be aiming for the top. Thanks so much for exploring this explainer with me, and keep aiming for true safety.